Welcome to Mind Healing with Bhavish, and this narrative is about how we break the impossible. Stay on. Once upon a sigh, when dreams had no legs, when courage did not know how to speak, when the tiny little step had not touched the trembling earth, there was something that existed. And it sat in silence, like a child afraid to ask a question. It was not screaming, it was a whisper, a fog of hesitation, idea pacing down the prison walls of doubt, the impossible. Let me ask you this question. Has there been any time in your life when there was a little voice inside you that said, it is impossible for you to do it? It has happened with me. And it did not sound like a villain. It sounded like reason. It sounded like logic. It sounded like the voice of every caring relative, teacher, or a friend. And all they said was it was not possible for people like us. And it did not sound cruel. It was caution. It was familiar. There once was a time when I wanted to take a leap, reinvent myself, start over. And just when I was about to take the first step, this voice came from inside. Who do you think you are? Do you have what it takes? What if you fail? And I believed it for a while. Do me a favor, close your eyes, not literally, just soften them, like curtains pulling down to a stage that is not yet built. Imagine a seed buried in the ground. It does not know how the sunlight feels like. It cannot look up in the sky. There is no guarantee of anything. It does not know what it is becoming. Yet it trusts. There's a little voice inside it that says, rise. And the only thing that this seed knows is to grow. That is you, that is me, that is all of us, becoming something that we have not seen yet. But there is something that they don't tell you about growth. The seed does not grow by adding. The seed grows by breaking. The shell cracks, the old self dies, and then, only then, the becoming begins. And what happens when we listen to that voice of fear inside us? We sit in silence. We shrink back into the comfortable and we call it reality. This is not realism. This is hypnosis, a daily trance of staying small while the world begs for us to grow, to expand. Until one moment, when the ache to stay small is louder than the fear to change, when the pain of silence is heavier than the risk of speaking, and then the impossible starts to crack up. You see, impossible is not a wall, it is a door that opens only from the inside. But there is a key to it. It is not confidence, it is not certainty, it is not waiting for the right moment. It is permission. Permission to try, permission to fall, permission to feel, permission to be a human again. And I've seen it happening. I've seen it in a woman who thought it was too late for her to start, and she painted her first canvas at the age of 60. I've seen it in a man who thought that real men don't cry until he had his newborn son come into being. And he cried like sky during monsoon. And I've seen it in a boy who used to stammer and stutter until he recited a poem and the whole room went silent. These are not miracles, these are moments. Moments when someone decided that I don't know how, but I'm going to try it anyways. You don't have to conquer the impossible. You don't have to wrestle it down to the ground. All you need to do is to be a person who says, what is next? I just need to know that. And how do you become that? By allowing yourself to dissolve, like a caterpillar. A caterpillar does not grow wings. It melts. it disintegrates, it breaks down into the cocoon. It loses its shape, it loses its identity, it loses its structure. And then something ancient arises. The thing is, you don't grow into greatness, you surrender to it. You die into it, not as a body, but as identity. And it hurts. Letting go of something that you think you are for something that you truly are is discomforting. Is not easy, it is messy, but it is also sacred. Now you and I have inherited the voice of limitation, passed on to us like a heirloom, polished with care, gift wrapped with caution. But there is something else that we have inherited, a quiet rebellion, a sacred ache to become more than what we are. And that's not ego, that is our soul remembering its original shape. And here's what I've learned. You don't have to silence fear, you have to walk with it. You don't have to be fearless, you have to be faithful. And then one day, it happens. The conversation, the speech, the change, the dream, all of it. And that day, there is no spotlight, there is no fireworks going off. It is just you standing there, smiling, knowing that the impossible is part of your story now. And you know what the funny part is? It doesn't seem like impossible anymore because you have changed. The mountain did not move. You did. You don't have to figure out all at once. You don't have to be brave at every moment. All you need is one courageous and honest yes. One tiny step. And then the universe responds. Not instantly, not loudly, but deeply. Because the truth always finishes what it starts. And you recall every day that you've spent in doubt and every night that you've cried is a part of your real journey. The goal is not going from the impossible to the possible. It is who you become in this process is the goal. So let me ask you this, my friends. What dream have you buried under the label of impossible? What truth have you pushed down because it made you feel uncomfortable? What vision keeps coming back to you every day at 2 a.m. asking, hey, do you remember me? This talk is not an advice. It is a mirror, reminding you of what you already know. That impossible is not a fact. It is a feeling. It is a fog. And fog always dissipates when you start walking. So walk, my friends. Even if your knees tremble, even if your voice shakes, even if no one claps, you walk. You walk because it is time. You walk because you're ready. You walk because your soul has waited for far too long. And when you hear the little voice inside you that says, you can't, that is fear wearing the mask of logic. So take that mask off, look directly into the eyes of it and say, I'm going to try it anyways. Because everything is impossible until it is done. Thank you so much for listening to this. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe or like or share it with someone else. If you did like it, you will like it. If you do like the content that I'm providing, you will automatically subscribe. And if you think that this was inspiring and motivating to yourself, you will pass it on to somebody you love and care for. I don't have to say that to you. But if you do, thumbs up. If you don't, still okay. Stay blessed until the next video, and I shall see you very, very soon. Thank you very much.